Okay, so in this video, hopefully you're watching this as part 2 of the series. Part 1 was identifying what tricks are. Part 2 is how to use cross-examination to identify tricks. So we're going to watch a round between Tom Cady and Arjun Tambe at the Cal Round Robin this year, where Arjun does a really great job of isolating a skepticism trigger and forcing Tom to accept that that is a skepticism trigger. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
This is on the living wage topic.
Sure.
And Tom is negating, Arjun is affirming.
Here. Did you read this?
Not. Some of it was exempt on the case. Answers to your framework warrants.
Ready?
Yeah.
Why are property rights relevant under your framework?
Because it's about people's ability to pursue their own ends. So.
Wait, why? Where is property rights? We need a line in your case.
So it's about right. So the standard is equal freedom. So it follows that you should allow people to pursue their own ends. It's worded as property rights, but it would still function underneath the standard.
Okay. Are there any skep, permissibility, or presumption triggers under the NC?
I mean I would say there are reasons why my framework best solve for skeptical objections.
There is no possible way in which in the 2NR you can say that if my framework is not true, then you should look to skep or presumption, permissibility, etc.
I mean, I would say there are reasons why it's impossible to generate.
No.
I mean, there are framework warrants that could be terminal defense and AC offense. Yes.
Okay, and in that case, then in such a case, then we would presume neg because of the lack of offense in the debate.
There would still be offense off the
end.
I am answering. If I win terminal, if I
triggers or not.
I don't know what you mean by triggers.
You know what a trigger is. Answer the question.
There are reasons for terminal defense on the AC offense. That could be a reason if the NC offense is incoherent because of framework responses you extend. Why there is no offense in the round.
Great. Next question. The argument. So the NC advocacy. You'll advocate unconditionally.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to listen to that one more time, and I want you to write down every phrase or question you found to be useful.
Permissibility or presumption trigger. Framework is not true, then. Did you read this?
Not. Some of it was exempt on the case. Answers to your framework warrants.
Ready?
Yeah.
Why are property rights relevant under your framework?
Because it's about people's ability to pursue their own ends. So.
Wait, why? Where is property rights? We need a line in your case.
So it's about right. So the standard is equal freedom. So it follows that you should allow people to pursue their own ends. It's worded as property rights, but it would still function underneath the standard.
Okay. Are there any skep, permissibility, or presumption triggers under the NC?
I would say there are reasons why my framework best solve for skeptical objections.
There is no possible way in which in the 2NR you can say that if my framework is not true, then you should look to skep or presumption, permissibility, etc.
I would say there are reasons why it's impossible to generate.
No.
There are framework warrants that could be terminal defense and AC offense. Yes.
Okay, and in that case, then in such a case, then we would presume neg because of the lack of offense in the debate.
There would still be offense off the end.
I
am answering. If I win terminal,
if I triggers or not.
I don't know what you mean by triggers.
You know what a trigger is. Answer the question.
There are reasons for terminal defense on the AC offense. That could be a reason if the NC offense is incoherent because of framework responses you extend. Why there is no offense in the round.
Great. Next question. The argument. So the NC advocacy.
Okay, so here's how I have the flow of Arjun's questions. First question was, are there any skep, presumption, permissibility triggers under the NC? Second question was, there is no possible way in which the 2NR you can say that if my framework is not true, you can look to presumption, permissibility, etc.
Sure.
Then Tom starts explaining something, and he goes, yes or no. It's a yes or no question.
Yeah.
Then Tom says something, and Arjun says, in such a case, we would presume neg due to a lack of offense. And Tom says something, and Arjun gets a little frustrated, and he says, can you just answer the question? Are there triggers or not? To which Tom replies, I don't know what a trigger is. And Arjun goes, you know what a trigger is, answer the question. Okay, so I thought that this was probably the best CX I've heard in a very long time in terms of illustrating how to pin down a tricks debater,
Uh-huh.
right? Now, I don't think it's fair to characterize Tom as a tricks debater. I think that just in this particular round, Tom read a negative framework which was partially justified based on escaping skepticism.
Sure.
So, what Arjun was trying to do was clearly isolate some type of violation he could use for a theory shell on the 1AR.
Right.
And so I think he did a pretty good job in cross-examination here, right? Like, I would read the interp, and then I would say on the violation, cross-examination was damning for Tom on this issue. He was really squirrely, which indicates that there probably is a trigger. Additionally, he explicitly told me that there would be reasons that skepticism could possibly interact with the AF framework, absent the neg framework being true, and those only possible reasons would be triggering via presumption or permissibility.
Tom even said yes, like at the end of the explanation. So yes, there is.
Yeah, exactly. And so Arjun here did a couple of things that we should emulate when we do CX against trick debaters. First is notice the specificity of his questions, right? So he asks, are there any triggers, and specifies which triggers. Then he asks in the form of explaining what the functionality would be, right? The second question is, in my opinion, one of the best. There is no possible way in which, in the 2NR, you can say that if my framework is not true, you can look to presumption permissibility.
Sure.
So he places himself in the foot of the negative, right, and says, from your shoes, if you lose the framework debate, can you make arguments for why your framework not being true means you look to permissibility, presumption, etc.? Another way to frame that question is, in the 2NR, if you lose that your framework is not true, are there any arguments you can make to indicate that my framework is not true, and this means you evaluate the debate on permissibility or presumption? Or another way to formulate the question, and I think even a better one, is if you lose the framework debate in the 2NR, does that commit you to winning underneath my framework?
What would that question be?
So the question is, if you lose the framework debate in the 2NR, do you have to win offense underneath my framework to win the round?
Okay, sure.
Do you see why that's a good question?
Yeah, because if they say no, then it probably means that there's triggers, because they have to win offense under the AC. Like, on a regular framework debate, they have to win offense under the your framework to win.
Good. So this is an example of asking a question in cross-examination with a hidden meaning. Right. You're trying to get an answer to something else, right? You're trying to figure out if they have triggers, and you can ask that question via, if I win the framework debate, the only way the negative can win the round is via offense underneath my framework, right? And the way that's phrased, they have to either agree, in which case you have an explicit concession that there are no triggers, or they have to disagree, in which case you can have a conversation about which other things matter.
Sure.
Now, this question is less powerful when they read theory, right? So the way I would ask the question when they read theory the way I would ask the question when I read theory is like this. Let's play a little game of hypotheticals, okay? And the other person would presumably say, okay. Now I say, let's say I beat theory, and then let's say I win the framework debate. I'm interested to know, can the negative win in any other way other than offense underneath my framework?
Okay.
So what that does is that gets rid of the response that, oh, well, yeah, if I don't win the framework debate, I could still win theory, right? And so you're beating them to the punch because you know they're going to give you that stupid answer.
Okay, yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the specificity of the question is important here. So is the insistence of yes or no. Are there triggers or not? You know what a trigger is. Answer the question.
Okay.
Right? And Arjun is really dominant here because he's not shouting.
Right.
He's not losing his cool. Right? He just sounds exasperated more than anything.
This guy,
yeah, he's just tired of these shenanigans. And he's like, is there a trigger or not? Like, it's a really simple question. Now, another example of like CX, like let's say you're trying to identify if there's a prioris in the AF. The best question you can use to identify if there are a prioris in the AF is this. Let's play a game of hypotheticals. Let's say that I concede to your standard and I spend 7 minutes link turning the AF. Is there anything you can extend other than offense back to your framework which can win you the debate?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Let's say that I spend 7 minutes link turning your AF. Is there any argument you can extend other than offense back to your framework that can win you the debate?
Okay.
Or another way to phrase the second part of that question would be, the only way you can win the debate then is via showing that you have more offense back to your framework,
like,
right?
I can read a shell on you reading 7 minutes of offense.
Right, and so then you would be like, that aside, what else can you extend?
Okay, sure, yeah.
Right? So if their follow-up is, oh, well, I could read theory, then you say, okay, yes. Aside from theory, what else can you read?
Okay.
I think rewatching 2015 TOC finals is really good on this issue as well. Pranav was really good in making sure the AF didn't have any tricks.
Okay.
Make sense? So the poor way to go about identifying a prioris against the tricks debater is, how many a prioris does this AF have?
What is a priori?
Yeah, or where are the a prioris in the AF?
Yeah.
And I would respond as a tricks debater, I'd say, I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean. Like, I don't know how you define that word.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so instead of straight up asking how many a prioris do you have, you can ask a question which gives you the answer to the question you're actually looking for.
Right.
And that question, the way you ask it, is you identify a necessary consequence of a prioris, which is that they can extend that argument even if you're winning more offense underneath their framework, and you limit it to the hypothetical of you winning more offense underneath their framework. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're asking a question that you're looking for, so you're trying to find the answer to question X, and so instead you ask question Y, which illustrates the answer to question X.
Okay, so like for a priori, so let's say I spent 7 minutes link turning the app. Are there any arguments you can extend beside your offense under the framework to win you the round? Right?
Yeah.
But what if like they say, they say in the 20 hour, it's like, oh my a priori was offense under the framework. Can that happen?
I mean, I could conceivably see how that could happen, but that would be really squirrely. Like, super squirrely.
Right.
Right? Because then the next thing would be to do isolate what offense they have underneath their framework.
Sure.
So if they say yes to that question, I would say, just to confirm, offense to your framework starts at this argument and ends at this argument, right?
Okay. Oh, sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? Or you can ask the question in another way. Do you have any offense back to your framework that's not located in your contention?
Okay.
So, Kirk, that was a great question. So the follow-up question to, if I spend 7 minutes link turning your AF, can you extend anything other than offense back to your framework to win? Let's say they say, no, I cannot extend anything other than offense back to my framework to win. Right? The follow-up question needs to be, okay, to confirm, all of your offense is located in your contention, right?
Okay.
Because then, if they say no, then you know something is fishy.
Okay.
And if they say no, I would say, okay, take me through all the arguments that are offensive and not explicitly labeled in your contention.
Wait. So take me through all the arguments?
Take me through the arguments that are offensive and not located in the contention.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But what if they say, like, the a priori was located in the contention? Right? How'd they get around that? Well, that'd be a really squirrely debater. Right?
Yeah, that would be a really squirrely debater. And also that a priori presumably would not link to the framework.
Right, okay, yeah.
So they would have had to isolate that. And if they're really tough on you, if they're being really squirrely, you can adopt the Arjun strategy and be like, dude, like, you know I'm trying to isolate all the squirrely a prioris you have in this app. Like, just be real with me. Like, if you're going to read tricks, be upfront about what they are.
Okay, what if, like, once you identify a trick, it's like, okay, I'll concede that I'm not going for that argument.
That's a great violation on CX should not be a check. That's like that's proving the abuse on the theoretical ground argument about sidestepping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Right? That like actually literally proves the abuse.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Cool? Okay, so using CX to identify tricks. The key is specific questions, and the key is not asking them straight up.
Sure.
Or if you ask them straight up, being able to ask the question in such a way that it requires them to pick, like, you have to be able to identify the consequence of the trick.
Right.
Right? Like, the consequence of the skep trigger is that the 2NR could extend arguments that my framework is not true, but you look to permissibility or presumption.
Yeah.
So Arjun asks, there is no possible way in which the 2 and R you can say that if my framework is not true, you can look to presumption, permissibility, etc. Right? So he identifies the consequence and he says you cannot do this, right? And the last thing is to keep your cool.
Yeah, I remember I debated a tricks debater, but I didn't know how to ask them, and he say, "Well, not with the question phrased like that." And then I was like, "Okay, there's something fishy," but I didn't know what to do. I just ran theory on him, but I still won. But yeah, it'd be better if I pinpointed
the abuse. Yeah, exactly. And so, great questions to pinpoint abuse are like, let's say I concede to your framework and I link turn it for 7 minutes. What can you extend other than offense explicitly linking back to your framework that wins you the round?
Sure.
They're going to say, oh, well, I could read theory. Okay. Aside from that, what else can you extend?
Right.
So if they come up with bullshit answers that are like, oh, I could do this or I could do that, it's like, okay, well, so like, oh, I could read a 1AR K. It's like, okay, aside from the K. So basically, they're going to tell you they can uplayer.
Right, yeah.
And your response needs to be, okay, aside from that, what else?
Oh, okay.
So you need to keep them moving through the list.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to end our conversation about utilizing presumption against tricks. Presumption in conjunction with converse is a really powerful weapon. Usually, if converse is won, the round with a trick is devolved to presumption, unless it's a nib or an a priori.
Sure.
But in almost all cases of triggers, especially skept triggers, if the neg's burden is not to disprove the AF, but to prove the converse of the resolution, i.e., the AF needs to prove something true, and the neg also needs to actively prove something true, then the neg can no longer win due to its own skeptical scenario.
Right, yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, so this should underscore the value of having presumption in the 1AC.
Sure.
And in the 1N. It's as simple as 5 seconds, but it can make the whole round different.
Right. Okay, makes sense, yeah.
And we've seen debates that we've analyzed where if they had had presumption, the round could have been different.
Yeah, right.
Cool. All right, any questions?
No, I'm good.